They laughed at the three humans sitting quietly in the back row of the Galactic Council, until they finally noticed the 6 soldiers standing behind them, and realized Earth had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. The Galactic Council chamber stretched vast and imposing, its crystalline walls refracting light from a dozen different suns. Representatives from 400 civilized species filled the tiered seats, their forms ranging from gaseous clouds to silicon-based giants. At the very back, in the cheapest seats reserved for newer species, sat the human delegation. There were only 3 of them. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the middle, flanked by her 2 aides Marcus Webb and Dr. Yuki Tanaka. They wore simple dark suits, a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garb of the other delegates. Sarah's hands rested calmly in her lap, her expression neutral as she watched the proceedings. The Zorthak ambassador was speaking, his 4 mandibles clicking with barely concealed contempt. And so we come to the matter of the Terran request for representation on the Security Subcommittee. Surely this is premature. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with amusement. The humans have been spacefaring for what, barely 2 centuries? My people were building quantum networks before your ancestors discovered fire. A ripple of what might have been laughter or its alien equivalent passed through the chamber. The Vextari delegate, a creature of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, pulsed with agreement. They sit in the back because they belong in the back. No offense to our Terran friends, but there is an order to these things. A hierarchy built over millions of years. Sarah didn't react. She simply sat there, her dark eyes watching, waiting. Marcus shifted slightly beside her, but she placed a hand on his arm. Not yet. The Kulathi representative rose, her serpentine form coiling upward. I must concur with my esteemed colleagues. The humans are adequate. They have mastered basic FTL travel. Their technology is quaint and they've shown some promise in diplomacy. But they lack the sophistication, the evolution, the sheer power that membership on the Security Subcommittee demands. More agreement rippled through the chamber. The human delegation remained silent. Look at them. The Zorthak ambassador continued, warming to his subject. They sit there so quietly, so meekly. This is not the behavior of a species ready to stand among the great powers. They have nothing to offer but primitive warships and naive idealism. The Selenari ambassador, a being of crystalline grace, added her voice. Perhaps in another 1,000 years after they've evolved beyond their violent tribal nature. For now, let them observe and learn. That is kindness enough. Through it all, Sarah sat perfectly still. Her breathing was even, her posture relaxed. To those who bothered to look closely, she seemed almost meditative. But none of the great powers bothered to look closely at humanity. Why would they? The session had broken for the evening cycle, and delegates dispersed to their various accommodations. The human delegation remained in their seats as the chamber emptied, waiting patiently as they always did for the crowds to clear. That went well, Marcus muttered sarcastically once they were alone. Did it? Sarah asked, a slight smile playing at her lips. Yuki checked her tablet. The Kronak delegation wants to meet. And the Vesh. Quiet request, not public. Interesting, Sarah said. They're starting to wonder what the proud delegates didn't know what they couldn't know because they'd never bothered to investigate was that humans had been members of the Galactic Council for less than 50 years. In that time, the human delegation had attended every session, sitting quietly in the back, never making demands, never causing scenes. But they had been listening, and watching, and learning. The galactic archives were open to all member species, a vast repository of knowledge spanning millions of years. Most species consulted them occasionally, looking up specific information as needed. The humans, however, had done something different. Something the arrogant elder species hadn't considered. They had read everything. For 47 years, human scholars had been quietly downloading, translating, and analyzing every piece of information in the archives. Military tactics from 1,000 wars, technological specifications from races that had risen and fallen, diplomatic strategies, economic theories, cultural analyses. While other species dipped into the archives like a library, humans had treated it like a university, and they'd been cramming for half a century. The Zorthak thought humanity's technology was quaint. They didn't know that human engineers had already reverse-engineered and improved upon 70% of the designs in the archives. The quantum networks the Zorthak were so proud of. Human physicists had found 6 critical inefficiencies in the design 3 decades ago. The Selenari thought humans were violent and tribal. They'd never bothered to study human history, the species that had gone from flying wooden biplanes to landing on their moon in 66 years, the species that had nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons, then stepped back from the brink and built a unified world government in less than a century. That night, in their modest delegation quarters, Sarah met with the Kronak and Vesh ambassadors. Both were from smaller species, not members of the dominant powers but not newcomers either. They'd been around long enough to recognize patterns. The Kronak ambassador, a heavy-set being with thick gray skin and intelligent eyes, spoke first. "Ambassador Chen, my people have been observing your delegation with interest. You are not what you appear to be, are you?" Sarah smiled warmly. "We're exactly what we appear to be, Ambassador. Humans, members of the Galactic Council, a young species learning our place in the galaxy. And yet," the Vesh ambassador interjected, her feathers ruffling, "my intelligence services report that human merchant vessels are now present in 47% of Council trade routes. Your ships are everywhere, Ambassador. Quiet, unobtrusive, but everywhere." "We're a curious people," Sarah said simply. "We like to see things. And your diplomatic corps," the Kronak continued. 300 human diplomats embedded in various worlds throughout Council space. All very friendly, very helpful, very eager to learn local customs. It's almost as if you're building a comprehensive intelligence network, while everyone assumes you're just naive newcomers. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her eyes sparkled. "Ambassador, I'm shocked. Are you suggesting humanity would engage in something so underhanded?" The Kronak laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "I'm suggesting that you're far more clever than the elder races give you credit for. And I'm suggesting that the Kronak Confederacy might benefit from closer ties with Earth, as would the Vesh Unity," the bird-like ambassador added. Sarah stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien stars. "Tell me something. Both your peoples have been in the Council for over 5,000 years. Why are you still treated as minor powers? Why do the Zorthak, the Selenari, the Kulathi make all the decisions?" The two ambassadors exchanged glances. The Vesh spoke. "Because they were here first. Because they have the largest fleets, the most advanced technology. Because that's the way it's always been." "And you accept this," Sarah said softly. "You sit in the middle rows, not quite in back with us, not quite at the front with them. You have voices but no real power. Tell me, does that seem right to you?" The Kronak's eyes narrowed. "What are you proposing, Ambassador Chen?" Sarah turned back to them. "I'm not proposing anything. I'm simply observing that there are perhaps 50 species in similar positions to yours, mid-level powers who do much of the actual work of the Council, while the elder races take the credit. And I'm observing that 50 species working together might have a very different kind of power than 3 elder races resting on ancient laurels. That would change everything," the Vesh said quietly. "Would it?" Sarah asked. "Or would it simply correct an imbalance that's persisted too long?" She smiled. "But these are just the idle thoughts of a representative from a naive, primitive species. I'm sure the elder races know best." The next council session began with what should have been routine business trade dispute resolutions, infrastructure projects, standard bureaucratic matters. But something was different. The mid-level powers, the species who usually voted in blocks according to which elder race they were aligned with, started voting independently. A Kronak proposal that would have normally died in committee suddenly had widespread support. A Vesh economic initiative that the elder races had been blocking for years passed with a simple majority. Small things, procedural things, but the patterns were shifting. The Zorthak ambassador's mandibles clicked with irritation. What is the meaning of this? The Kronak proposal violates established trade protocols. The Kronak ambassador stood calmly. With respect, it violates protocols that benefit the elder races at the expense of everyone else. The proposal is fair and equitable to all members of the Council. The Galactic Council operates on tradition and established order. The Selenari ambassador protested, her crystalline form refracting light sharply. Sarah was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer but no less powerful. "We want what every species wants: security, prosperity, a voice in our own future. We want to live in a galaxy where decisions aren't made by 3 races, while 400 others follow orders. We want a council that actually functions as a council, not as an oligarchy with a democratic veneer." "Indeed," the Vesh ambassador said smoothly. And the archives show that the Council's founding principles emphasize equality among all member species. Perhaps we've strayed from those traditions. Perhaps it's time to return to them. The session dissolved into argument, something that rarely happened in the carefully controlled council proceedings. Through it all, the human delegation sat quietly in the back, saying nothing, their faces carefully neutral. But the elder races were beginning to notice them now. And what they noticed first was not Sarah or Marcus or Yuki. It was what sat behind them. The Kulati ambassador was the first to truly look at the human delegation during a recess. Not at the humans themselves, but at what accompanied them. Every delegate to the council was permitted security personnel and aides in the gallery behind their seats. Most elder races brought honor guards and ceremonial armor, status symbols meant to impress. Behind the humans sat 6 figures in simple black uniforms. They didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't speak. They simply observed with an intensity that once noticed was deeply unsettling. These weren't ceremonial guards. These were something else entirely. The Kulati ambassador's advanced sensors finally analyzed them properly, and what she discovered made her blood run cold. These humans weren't just guards. Their neural patterns showed cognitive processing speeds that suggested extensive augmentation. Their muscle density was wrong too high, probably carbon fiber reinforcement, and the way they watched everything, tracked everyone, processed information. These were soldiers. Real soldiers. The kind forged in genuine warfare, not the ceremonial honor duels the elder races remembered from thousands of years ago. She pulled up Earth's file, really reading it for the first time rather than skimming the summary. Her eyes widened. Humanity's history was a nightmare of constant warfare, 2 global conflicts using nuclear weapons, countless smaller wars. They'd barely achieved spaceflight before they'd nearly exterminated themselves, and the only reason they'd survived was that they'd gotten very, very good at warfare, and then very, very good at controlling their violent impulses. Ancestors preserve us, she whispered. They're not primitive. They're post-violent. The difference was crucial. The elder races had evolved past violence so long ago they'd forgotten what real military capability looked like. Their fleets were designed for show and for suppressing primitive species. Their tactics hadn't changed in 10,000 years because they'd never needed to change. Humanity had been fighting existential wars less than 200 years ago. Their military doctrine was contemporary, brutal, and effective. And now she looked at those 6 soldiers sitting behind the human delegation and realized, if those 6 represented the average human soldier, and Earth had billions of humans, she immediately requested an urgent private session with the other elder race ambassadors. The 3 elder race ambassadors met in a secure chamber, their usual composure cracking. The Kulati ambassador had shared her findings, and now they were reviewing human capabilities with actual attention for the first time. This can't be accurate, the Selenari ambassador said, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. They claim to have 17,000 warships? Not claim, the Zorthak corrected, his mandibles tight. They've registered 17,000 military vessels with council traffic control for insurance purposes. That's a bureaucratic record, not a boast, and that's just what they've admitted to. The Kulati pulled up tactical assessments. Look at the design philosophy. Our ships are built for overwhelming firepower in fleet engagements the traditional way. Human ships are smaller, faster, designed for asymmetric warfare. Multiple redundant systems, distributed command and control. They're built by a species that expects to lose ships and keeps fighting anyway. They've been studying our fleets, the Zorthak said quietly, pulling up surveillance reports his people had finally bothered to generate. Every time there's a joint exercise, human observers are present. Every time we deploy ships near human trade routes, they're watching. They've been conducting a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation for decades, and we were too arrogant to notice. The Selenari ambassador's glow dimmed. What about their actual combat capabilities? Surely they haven't fought anyone since joining the council. It's all theoretical. Not quite, the Kulati said grimly. She displayed a report that had been filed in the council's bureaucratic labyrinth, and subsequently ignored. 8 years ago, a human colony world was raided by the Kresh pirates. The Kresh are the most effective pirate fleet in this sector. They've been operating for 300 years, and we've never been able to eradicate them. I remember that incident, the Zorthak said. The humans requested permission to handle it themselves. We granted it because we assumed they'd negotiate or pay ransom like everyone else. They didn't negotiate, the Kulathi continued. They sent one ship, the USCS Retribution, a heavy cruiser. It tracked the Kresh back to their hidden base in the Keros Nebula, a base we'd been trying to find for a century. Then it called in coordinates and 17 more human ships appeared. She displayed the tactical recordings, obtained from long-range sensors. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. The humans wiped out the entire Kresh fleet, 73 ships, and destroyed their base installations. They recovered the colonists and left one Kresh ship intact with a message programmed into its computers. What message? The Selenari asked. The Kulathi displayed it. Simple. Direct. In every major galactic language. Humanity protects its own. This is your only warning. The three ambassadors sat in silence, the implications sinking in. Finally, the Zorthak spoke. They're not a minor power playing at diplomacy. They're a major military force deliberately presenting themselves as weak while they map out all our capabilities. And they've been organizing the mid-level powers, the Selenari added. Those voting blocs that suddenly formed weren't spontaneous. The humans have been building alliances while we ignored them. So what do? The Kulathi asked. If we move against them now, we'll validate everything they've been telling the other species, that we're tyrants maintaining control through threat of force. And if we don't move against them, the Zorthak said, they'll continue building their coalition until they have enough votes to restructure the council itself. The Selenari ambassador's form flickered with what might have been fear or admiration. We've made a critical error. We assumed they were like we were when we were young, naive, eager to please, easily controlled. But they're not us. They're something entirely different. The next full session of the Galactic Council had a different energy. The elder races had finally done their homework, and now they looked at the human delegation with new eyes. Ambassador Chen and her two aides sat in their usual seats, calm and composed. Behind them, the 6 human soldiers remained motionless, their presence suddenly ominous rather than insignificant. The Zorthak ambassador stood, and the chamber fell silent. I would like to address our esteemed colleagues from Earth, he said, his tone devoid of the earlier condescension. It has come to our attention that we may have underestimated humanity's capabilities and intentions. Sarah Chen smiled politely, but said nothing. Perhaps, the Zorthak continued, it would be appropriate for the human delegation to clarify their position. You have been very quiet, very patient, but we now understand that this quietness may have been strategic. Sarah stood slowly, smoothing her jacket. The gesture was simple, professional, but every being in the chamber was suddenly focused on her. She walked down to the main floor, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Ambassador, she said, her voice carrying clearly. For 47 years, humanity has been a member of this council. In that time, we have attended every session. We have paid our dues. We have followed every rule, honored every tradition, respected every protocol. We have been model members of this galactic community. And yet, the Selenari interjected, you've been gathering intelligence, building military forces, forming secret alliances. Sarah turned to face her. Secret. Ambassador, we've registered every ship with council traffic control. Our diplomatic corps operates openly. Our merchant vessels file proper flight plans. Every human in council space is documented and accounted for. We've hidden nothing. You simply never bothered to look. The truth of that hung in the air. The Kulathi ambassador spoke carefully. You've been studying us, learning our weaknesses. We've been studying you, Sarah agreed. Learning your histories, your cultures, your languages, your technologies. Is that not what new members of a community do? Learn about their neighbors? Your military, the Zorthak began, is defensive, Sarah interrupted firmly, and registered with the council. We have attacked no one. We have threatened no one. We destroyed a pirate base that had raided our colony, and we did so within our rights under council law. Every action we've taken has been legal and proper. Then what do you want? The Selenari demanded. Why build such forces? Why organize the other species? What is humanity's goal? Sarah was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer but no less powerful. We want what every species wants, security, prosperity, a voice in our own future. We want to live in a galaxy where decisions aren't made by 3 races, while 400 others follow orders. We want a council that actually functions as a council, not as an oligarchy with a democratic veneer. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of species. For millions of years, you three races have run this galaxy. You've done so based on the principle that you were here first, that you're the most advanced, the most evolved. But you've grown complacent. You've stopped innovating. You've stopped growing. You maintain power not through continued excellence, but through institutional momentum. Humanity is young, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. We've been in space for barely 2 centuries. We achieved faster-than-light travel through trial and error because we didn't have anyone to teach us. We made first contact with the Galactic Council exactly 50 years ago, and do you know what our first emotion was? She paused, and the chamber was absolutely silent. Relief. We were relieved because we thought we'd finally found civilizations that had figured it out. Races that had moved beyond war, beyond exploitation, beyond the tribalism and violence that nearly destroyed us. We came here hoping to learn from you to become better than we were. And instead, the Quilathi asked quietly, instead we found the same patterns, just on a larger scale. Elder races making decisions for younger ones. The strong dictating to the weak. Resources flowing upward to the same few civilizations while others struggle. And we realized something important. She looked directly at the 3 elder ambassadors. You're not more evolved than us. You're just older. An age without growth is just stagnation. The Kronak ambassador stood. Humanity has extended offers of alliance to 47 species in the past year. Not to oppose the elder races, but to create a true coalition of equals. To reform the council so that it represents all its members, not just the founding 3. The Vesh ambassador rose as well. 17 additional species have indicated support for comprehensive council reforms. That's 57 votes, including humanities. Not quite a majority, but enough to block any major initiative. The implications rippled through the chamber. The elder races had maintained control through a simple majority voting system, assuming that the fractured mid-level powers would never unite. Now they faced an organized opposition that could paralyze the council. The Zorthak ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress. This is unprecedented. You're threatening to tear apart millions of years of stable governance. Stable for whom? Marcus spoke up from the back, standing for the first time. Ambassador, the Kronak have been trying to get approval for new infrastructure in their sector for 60 years. The Vesh have requested technology transfers that the elder races use freely, but won't share. 300 species in this council have legitimate grievances that are ignored because they lack the votes to matter. Sarah raised a hand, and Marcus sat back down. We're not threatening anything, Ambassador Zorthak. We're exercising our rights as council members. We're forming alliances, building consensus, proposing reforms. This is democracy in action. This is a coup, the Selenari hissed. No, Sarah said firmly. A coup is illegal seizure of power. We're participating in the system exactly as it's designed. The only reason it feels like a coup to you is that you've never had to operate within a system you couldn't control. Yuki stood now, tablet in hand. We've prepared a comprehensive reform proposal. It will be formally submitted next session. It includes proportional representation based on population and economic contribution, term limits for security subcommittee positions, mandatory technology sharing for defensive systems, and transparent auditing of council resource allocation. These reforms would fundamentally alter the balance of power, the Quilathi protested. Yes, Sarah agreed. They would make the council more democratic and more fair. Is that a problem? The tension in the chamber had reached a breaking point. The elder races were cornered, and cornered beings often became dangerous. The Zorthak ambassador stood to his full height, his posture aggressive. And if we refuse to consider these reforms, if we use our current majority to block them, it was then that the 6 human soldiers stood up. They moved in perfect synchronization, rising from their seats behind the human delegation. They didn't reach for weapons, didn't make threatening gestures. They simply stood, and their presence transformed the dynamic in the chamber. These weren't ceremonial guards. They were warriors, and every being with working prey instincts could suddenly feel it. The way they held themselves, the way their eyes tracked every movement. The coiled readiness in their posture, these were beings who had seen real combat and survived. Captain James Rodriguez, the lead soldier, spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, professional, but it carried an edge that ceremonial guards never had. Ambassador Chen has been very diplomatic, so let me be direct. Humanity has 17,000 registered military vessels. We also have an unregistered fleet approximately 3 times that size. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Selenari ambassador pulsed with alarm. You violated Council military disclosure regulations. No, Rodriguez corrected. The regulations require disclosure of military vessels operating in Council space. These ships are in human space, defending human worlds. We've broken no laws. We've simply been thorough in our defensive preparations. 53,000 warships, the Zorthak calculated quickly. You'd rival any of the elder races. We'd surpass them, Rodriguez said matter-of-factly. But numbers aren't what I want you to focus on. I want you to understand what those ships represent. He gestured to his 5 companions. We're not from Earth. We're from different human colony worlds. Mars, Europa, New Johannesburg, Nova Terra, Tau Ceti 4, and Proxima Station. 6 soldiers from 6 worlds, and we all have the same training, the same doctrine, the same commitment. Do you understand what that means? The Kulathi ambassador did. Standardization, interoperability, a truly unified military force across multiple systems. Exactly, Rodriguez confirmed. The elder races have large fleets, but they're distributed across vast territories. Your response times are measured in weeks or months. You haven't fought a real war in 10,000 years, so your tactics are obsolete. Your ships are impressive but designed for the last war, not the next one. He paused, letting that sink in. Humanity isn't trying to conquer anyone. We're not interested in ruling the galaxy, but we're also not going to sit quietly in the back and accept whatever scraps the elder races decide to give us. Ambassador Chen has offered you a peaceful path to reform. I'd strongly suggest you take it. Sarah held up a hand. Captain, that's enough. Rodriguez nodded and sat back down, his 5 companions following. But the message had been delivered. Humanity had teeth, and they were willing to show them if necessary. Sarah returned to the central floor, her expression composed. Ambassadors, we didn't come here to threaten or to posture. We came here to participate in a galactic community, but participation requires that our voice matters, that our interests are considered, that we have genuine agency in our own fate. She pulled out a data tablet. This reform proposal represents months of work with dozens of species. It's not a human document, it's a coalition document. We're not trying to replace elder race dominance with human dominance. We're trying to create something better, a council where all members have proportional influence based on their actual contributions to galactic society. And if we reject it? The Zorthak asked. Then we continue to build our coalition, Sarah said simply. We continue to vote as a bloc on every issue. We continue to expand our alliances until we have a majority. It might take 5 years, it might take 50, but eventually the council will change. The only question is whether that change happens through cooperation or through confrontation. The Selenari ambassador dimmed thoughtfully. You've been planning this since you joined the council. We've been preparing for this, Sarah corrected. We came here hoping to find enlightened civilizations that would accept us as equals. When we realized that wasn't going to happen automatically, we adapted. We learned everything we could. We built relationships with species the elder races had ignored. We developed capabilities that would make us impossible to dismiss. And we waited for the right moment to propose meaningful change. 47 years, the Kulathi said. You've been patient for 47 years. Sarah smiled. Ambassador, we're human. Our civilization is 6,000 years old. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons, then built a world government in 60 years. We're very good at long-term planning when we need to be. 47 years is nothing. The Kronak ambassador stood. The coalition supports these reforms. We believe they're fair and long overdue. The question is whether the elder races are wise enough to accept change gracefully, or whether they'll force a confrontation that serves no one's interests. The 3 elder ambassadors looked at each other, communicating through channels the other species couldn't access. Finally, the Zorthak spoke. We need time to review these proposals. This session is adjourned for a 10-day. As the chamber emptied, the dynamics had fundamentally shifted. The humans were no longer the quiet newcomers in the back. They were players, and everyone knew it. Over the following days, the elder races scrambled to assess the situation. Their analysts finally did what they should have done decades ago, a comprehensive evaluation of human capabilities, alliances, and strategic positioning. The results were sobering. The human coalition wasn't just a voting bloc, it was an economic network. Human merchant vessels had become integral to trade routes throughout the mid-level powers' territories. Human technical advisors had helped upgrade infrastructure on 40 worlds. Human medical technology had been shared freely with species the elder races had ignored. The Kulathi ambassador met privately with Sarah. "You've been very clever. If we move against you militarily, we alienate 57 species and trigger an economic disruption that would hurt us as much as you. If we try to isolate you diplomatically, we admit we're tyrants maintaining control through coercion. Those would both be bad choices." Sarah agreed. "So we're left with your reforms." "You're left with negotiating the details of reforms," Sarah corrected. "The general principle that the council needs to be more democratic and representative, that's not negotiable. But how we implement it, there's room for discussion." The Quilathi's serpentine form coiled thoughtfully. "You understand that if we agree to this, it will fundamentally alter galactic power structures. The elder races will lose influence." "You'll lose your monopoly on influence," Sarah said. "That's not the same as losing influence entirely. The Kulathi have wisdom earned over millions of years. The Zorthak have scientific achievements that are genuinely impressive. The Selenari have cultural and philosophical traditions that humanity deeply respects. None of that goes away. You'll just have to share the decision-making. And humanity, what will you gain?" "A seat at the table," Sarah said simply. "The ability to protect our interests without having to ask permission. Access to the same technologies and resources that the elder races take for granted. A voice in shaping the galaxy's future." "You could take more," the Kulathi observed. "With 53,000 warships, you could demand more." "We could," Sarah agreed. "But we don't want to rule through force. We've been there, done that, nearly destroyed ourselves doing it. We're trying to be better than our history. We're trying to build something that lasts, and systems built on coercion don't last." The Kulathi ambassador was silent for a long moment. "You're gambling that we're wise enough to choose adaptation over resistance." "I'm betting that you're smart enough to see the mathematics," Sarah said. "You can fight us and maybe win, but at what cost? A war would devastate trade, destabilize dozens of systems, and even if you won, you'd be ruling over resentful, hostile populations. Or you can work with us to reform the council, maintain your influence in a new structure, and help build something stronger than what currently exists." "When you put it that way, it's an easy choice," Sarah finished. "But I know it doesn't feel easy. Change never does, especially when you've been comfortable for millions of years." 10 days later, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber was packed. Word had spread that something historic was about to happen. The human delegation sat in their usual seats, but now every being in the chamber was aware of them. The Zorthak ambassador stood. "The elder races have reviewed the proposed reforms. We have concerns, but we also recognize that the current system may benefit from modernization. That was diplomatic speak, for we're cornered and we know it." But Sarah appreciated that they were saving face. "We propose a compromise," the Selenari ambassador continued. "The reforms will be implemented over a 20-year period, allowing for gradual adjustment. The Security Subcommittee will expand from 3 permanent members to 7, with 4 rotating seats elected by region. Technology sharing will be phased in according to a mutually agreed timeline. Economic restructuring will begin immediately." It wasn't everything the coalition had asked for, but it was substantial. Sarah looked at the Kronak and Vesh ambassadors, saw their slight nods. This would work. "The coalition accepts this compromise," Sarah announced, "with the understanding that progress will be monitored and adjustments made if implementation falls behind schedule." "Agreed," the Zorthak said. And just like that, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. Not through war, not through violence, but through patient preparation, strategic alliance building, and the willingness to show strength when necessary. 20 years later, Ambassador Chen was older now, her hair streaked with gray. She no longer represented Earth at the Galactic Council she'd trained her replacement years ago. Instead, she taught at the new Galactic Diplomatic Academy on Luna, where humans and aliens learned together how to navigate the complex politics of the reformed council. The changes had been profound. The mid-level powers had found their voice. Technology had spread more widely, lifting dozens of civilizations to new capabilities. The council had become genuinely representative, with real debate and real compromise. The elder races had adapted, as Sarah had predicted. They were still influential, still respected but no longer dominant. They'd had to earn their positions through continued excellence rather than resting on ancient achievements. And humanity. Humanity had continued doing what it did best, learning, adapting, building relationships, and staying prepared. The fleet had grown to 73,000 ships, still defensive, still distributed, but a constant reminder that humans protected their interests. Sarah stood at her office window, looking up at Earth hanging in the lunar sky. A young human student approached her, one of the brightest in the academy. "Professor Chen, I've been studying the historical records from the Reform period. Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Was it ever really about the military capability? The 53,000 ships? Or was that just theater?" Sarah smiled. "What do you think?" The student considered. "I think the ships were real and the capability was real. But I think the real power was something else. It was the coalition, the relationships, the fact that 57 species were willing to stand together." "Very good," Sarah said. "The ships were necessary. You can't negotiate from weakness in galactic politics. But they were never the goal. They were a tool to achieve the goal, which was a seat at the table and a voice in our future. We didn't win because we could destroy the elder races. We won because we made it clear that excluding us was more costly than including us." "Is that the human way?" the student asked. "Strategic patience followed by decisive action?" "It's one human way," Sarah said. "We've tried a lot of approaches over our history. This one worked for this situation. The next situation might require something different. The key is understanding that power comes in many forms," Sarah continued. "Military strength is one, but knowledge is power. Relationships are power. Being indispensable to trade networks is power. Understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves is power." The student nodded thoughtfully. "The elder races thought we were weak because we sat quietly in the back. They thought we were weak because that's what they wanted to see," Sarah corrected. "They'd been on top for so long that they couldn't imagine being challenged. They saw what they expected to see: a primitive species, grateful to be admitted to their club. They never looked closely enough to see what we actually were." "And what were we?" Sarah turned from the window to face her student. "We were survivors. Every species in the council had evolved on a single world, then spread to the stars at their own pace in their own way. But Earth? Earth nearly killed us a dozen times over. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and then once we became the dominant species, we nearly finished the job ourselves. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse, nuclear weapons." She walked to her desk and pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. The elder races evolved past violence millions of years ago. Their histories are stable, progressive, peaceful. Ours is a story of constant crisis and adaptation. We learned to cooperate not because we were enlightened, but because we'd die if we didn't. We learned to think long-term not because we were wise, but because short-term thinking kept nearly destroying us. The student studied the timeline. "So when we joined the council, we were the only species in that chamber who had recent visceral experience with existential threats. The elder races had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. We never had that luxury," Sarah smiled. "They thought that made us primitive. It actually made us dangerous because we knew what they'd forgotten." "That strength isn't just about technology or military force," the student said slowly. "It's about will, about adaptation, about refusing to give up." "Exactly," Sarah said. "When the Kresh pirates attacked our colony, the elder races expected us to negotiate or pay ransom because that's what civilized species do. But we're not civilized in the way they understand civilization. We're post-apocalyptic survivors who built a civilization. There's a difference." She pulled up the recording of the Kresh engagement, the 11-minute battle that had announced humanity's arrival as a military power. 17 ships, 73 pirate vessels. And we won not because we had better technology the Kresh had been raiding for 3 centuries with stolen elder race equipment. We won because our doctrine was written by people who'd fought real wars, not ceremonial duels. Distributed command, redundant systems, asymmetric tactics, the student recited. All lessons learned the hard way over centuries of human conflict, Sarah confirmed. The elder races built their ships to win glorious fleet engagements. We built ours to survive, to keep fighting even after taking heavy damage, to win ugly if necessary, because we'd learned that survival matters more than glory. The next generation, a chime sounded another visitor. Sarah looked up to see Ambassador Marcus Webb, now the senior human representative to the council. He'd aged well, though his temples were gray and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 20 years ago. "Professor," he said with a smile, "still corrupting young minds with the truth about galactic politics?" The student stood and bowed respectfully. "Ambassador Webb, I'll leave you two to talk." They departed and Marcus took a seat across from Sarah's desk. "The new council session starts next month," Marcus said. "We're nominating the Kronak for one of the rotating security subcommittee seats." "Good choice," Sarah said. "They've earned it." "How are the elder races taking it?" "Gracefully, mostly. The Zorthak are adapting faster than expected. They've actually become advocates for reform in areas we hadn't even proposed yet. The Selenari are struggling more. They tied a lot of their identity to being elder statesmen of the galaxy. They'll adapt," Sarah said. "Or they won't and they'll fade into irrelevance. That's the thing about the new council, it rewards current contribution, not past glory." Marcus leaned back. "Do you ever wonder if we pushed too hard? If we forced change that wasn't ready to happen?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "Every day. But then I look at the results. 73 species have gained real representation. Technology is spreading to civilizations that needed it. The galaxy is more stable now because more voices are heard, more grievances are addressed. Was it perfect? No. Did we make mistakes? Absolutely. But was it necessary?" She nodded. "Yes." "The younger generation doesn't remember what it was like before," Marcus observed. "Students like that one, they've grown up in a galaxy where humanity has always had a voice. They don't understand how close we came to being permanent second-class citizens." "That's good," Sarah said. "It means we succeeded. The point wasn't to fight forever, it was to fight once, decisively, and create a system where our children wouldn't have to fight at all." Marcus smiled. "Speak of children, I heard your granddaughter just graduated from the Terran Naval Academy." "Top of her class." Sarah's expression softened. "She did. Posted to the USCS Endeavour, a deep space exploration vessel, not a warship. That's the future I wanted for her generation." "Think we'll ever need those 73,000 warships?" Marcus asked. "I hope not," Sarah said, "but I'm glad they're there. Peace isn't the absence of capability, it's the choice not to use it. We're strong enough that no one wants to fight us, which means we don't have to fight. That's the paradox of power. The more prepared you are for war, the less likely war becomes." The human legacy Marcus stood to leave, then paused. "Sarah, I'm giving a speech at the Academy's graduation next month. What should I tell them? The ones who'll be our diplomats, our officers, our representatives for the next generation?" Sarah thought for a long moment. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that humanity's strength has never been about being the biggest or the strongest or the most advanced. It's been about resilience, about adapting to whatever challenges we face, about learning from everyone, even from species who look down on us." She walked back to the window, gesturing at the earth above. "Tell them that we sat quietly in the back of that council chamber for 47 years, and everyone thought it meant we were weak. But really we were listening. We were learning. We were preparing. And when the moment came, we were ready. The quiet humans in the back," Marcus mused. "Who would have thought that our greatest weapon would be patience?" "It wasn't just patience," Sarah corrected. "It was strategic patience combined with meticulous preparation. We knew we couldn't change the council by demanding change. We were too new, too weak in their eyes. So we made ourselves indispensable. We built relationships. We mastered their technology and improved on it. We created a fleet they couldn't ignore. And then, when we had leverage, we proposed reforms that were so obviously fair that refusing them would have exposed the elder races as tyrants. And they chose to adapt rather than resist," Marcus said. "Most of them did," Sarah agreed. "Some are still bitter about it. But the mathematics were clear. Resisting change would have cost them more than accepting it. We gave them a path to remain influential in a new system, and most of them were smart enough to take it." Marcus nodded slowly. "So I should tell the students to be patient, be prepared, and be strategic." "Tell them to be human," Sarah said simply. "We're not the oldest species or the wisest or the most powerful. But we're survivors. We're adapters. We're relentless learners. Those traits got us from caves to starships in 6,000 years. Those traits got us a seat at the galactic table in less than a century. Those traits will carry us forward, whatever challenges we face next." After Marcus left, Sarah returned to her desk. On the wall behind her hung a photograph, the original human delegation from 50 years ago. Three humans in simple dark suits sitting in the back row of the Galactic Council. Behind them, barely visible in the photo, 6 soldiers in black uniforms. A reminder of where they'd started. A reminder of what they'd achieved. Her desk console chimed with a message from the Council archives. They were compiling a historical record of the reform period and wanted her input. Sarah pulled up the questionnaire, reading through the prompts. One question stood out. What do you believe was the turning point in humanity's path from junior member to full partner in the Galactic Council? Sarah thought about all the moments that had mattered. The first trade agreements, the Kresh incident, the patient building of alliances, the reveal of humanity's true capabilities, the negotiations that had transformed the Council itself. But the real turning point, she realized, had been much earlier. It had been the moment when humanity first joined the Council and made a choice. They could try to impress the elder races immediately and fail, or they could take the long view. They'd chosen patience. They'd chosen preparation. They'd chosen to sit quietly in the back and learn everything they could before making their move. She began typing her response. The turning point wasn't a single moment, it was a philosophy. Humanity understood that we were entering a game where the rules were established by species millions of years older than us. We could have demanded immediate respect and been dismissed. Instead, we earned respect through competence, preparation, and strategic patience. We sat in the back not because we were weak, but because we were learning. We were quiet not because we had nothing to say, but because we were listening, and when we finally spoke, we spoke with the authority of those who had done their homework, built their capabilities, and earned their position. The elder races ridiculed the quiet humans in the back. Then they saw what sat behind them, not just 6 soldiers, but the full weight of humanity's history, capability, and determination. They saw a species that had survived every challenge Earth could throw at it, then survived the challenge of reaching for the stars. They saw us for what we truly were, not primitive newcomers, but evolved survivors. And everything changed. Sarah saved the response and leaned back in her chair. Through her office window, Earth continued its eternal rotation, blue and green and white against the black of space. Somewhere down there, new generations of humans were being born who would never know a time when humanity wasn't a major power in galactic politics. That had been the goal all along. Not to dominate, not to replace the elder races, but simply to ensure that humanity would always have a voice in its own destiny. Mission accomplished. But Sarah knew that this was just one chapter in a much longer story. The galaxy was vast and there were challenges yet to come. New species would join the Council. Old conflicts would resurface in new forms. The balance of power would continue to shift and evolve. And through it all, humanity would do what it had always done: adapt, survive, and find a way forward. Because that's what humans did. That's what the quiet ones in the back had always been preparing for. The new Council 1 month later, the Galactic Council convened for the first session under its fully reformed structure. The chamber looked different now. The seats were reorganized so that no species sat in the back anymore. Circular tiers ensured that every delegate could see every other delegate. The architecture itself embodied the new philosophy: equality of participation. Ambassador Marcus Webb sat in the human section, flanked by his team. Behind him sat 6 soldiers, a tradition maintained, a reminder of where humanity had come from and what they'd been willing to do to earn their place. But these soldiers were different. 3 were human, but 3 were not. A Kronak warrior, a Vesh honor guard, and a Kulathi security specialist. They wore matching uniforms, a symbol of the alliances that had changed everything. The session began, and the new format was immediately apparent. A Kronak delegate proposed an infrastructure initiative. A Vesh representative suggested modifications. A human economic analyst offered data supporting the proposal. A Selenari elder provided historical context. A Zorthak engineer noted potential technical challenges. It was messy. It was loud. It was democratic, and it worked. The elder races still had influence, their expertise and experience still mattered. But now dozens of other voices mattered too. Decisions were made through genuine consensus rather than imposed from above. Marcus watched the proceedings with satisfaction. This was what Sarah had envisioned. This was what they'd fought for. During a recess, the Kulathi ambassador approached him. She was the same ambassador who 20 years ago had been the first to truly see the humans for what they were. "Ambassador Webb," she said, her serpentine form coiling gracefully. "I wanted to tell you something. When I first discovered what humanity was capable of, I was frightened. I thought you were a threat to everything we'd built." "And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I understand that you were exactly what the Council needed. We had become stagnant, self-satisfied. We needed someone to challenge us, to force us to grow again. I'm grateful it was you," Marcus smiled. "Ambassador, the truth is we needed you too. Humanity learned more from the Council in 50 years than we could have learned in 5 centuries on our own. This was never about replacing the elder races. It was about becoming partners." "Partners," the Kulathi repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, I think that's exactly what we've become." She paused, then added with what might have been amusement, "Though I must admit, I still remember the shock when we finally looked at those 6 soldiers sitting behind your delegation. We'd been ignoring them for decades, thinking they were ceremonial. And then we really looked and saw what sat behind us," Marcus finished. "Not just soldiers, but everything they represented. Our history, our capability, our determination. Your willingness to do whatever was necessary," the Kulathi agreed. "That was the message, wasn't it? That humanity would sit quietly and work within the system, but if pushed too far, you had the capability to flip the board entirely." "We preferred not to flip the board," Marcus said. "But yes, we needed the elder races to understand that patience wasn't weakness, that quiet wasn't submission. That sitting in the back was a choice, not an inevitability." The Kulathi's form shifted in what her species used as a gesture of respect. "You've taught the galaxy an important lesson, Ambassador Webb. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They might be quiet because they're learning, and when they finish learning, everything changes." As the session resumed, Marcus reflected on those words. The quiet ones. That's what humanity had been, sitting in the back of the council chamber for 47 years. Quiet, patient watching, and learning, until the day they weren't quiet anymore. And the galaxy had never been the same since. The end author's note. This story explores the concept that strength comes in many forms. Military power matters, but so does strategic patience, alliance building, institutional knowledge, and the wisdom to know when to speak and when to listen. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its fleet. It was its willingness to play the long game, to learn everything it could, and to wait for the right moment to act. The elder races made a classic mistake. They assumed that because they were older and more established, they were inherently superior. They never considered that a younger species might have advantages they'd lost recent experience with genuine conflict, contemporary military doctrine, and the hunger to prove themselves that comes from being underestimated. In the end, humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. They simply earned their place in it, through preparation, competence, and strategic vision. And in doing so, they made the galaxy better for everyone, including the elder races who initially dismissed them. Because that's what true strength looks like. Not domination, but elevation. Not replacing the old, but integrating it with the new. Not winning at all costs, but winning in a way that creates lasting peace and genuine partnership. That's the human way, or at least it's the way we hope it could be.